3. Hey everyone, welcome back to a sim racing experience. My name's Jose and I'm a sim racer here in Miami. And today I'm getting into section 3 of the beginner's guide and I'm going to be talking about racing craft, and I'm going to get right into it with the driving line. And starting with the driving line, I was just like anybody else using the I was just and getting right into the driving line. The driving line for me was something that was difficult to get into. And starting with the driving line, that was always something that for me, going from a real track to a simulator was always kind of difficult because of my perspective on the track and how I was sitting, I guess, and just a whole bunch of other variables that made it a little bit confusing for me to figure out my way around the track and figure out where the driving line was. So, what I ended up doing, a lot of these simulator games, they give you the opportunity to enable the dynamic racing line, and that's always been a huge help just because you're able to go and you're able to see the breaking point and you're able to see what's coming. I've since obviously turned that off. I've since turned that off just because I've been wanting to push myself to learn the tracks properly and learn breaking points properly. And now it's been about now it's been about 6 to 8 months at least that it's been off. And even now in iRacing, I don't have it on. Just I'm trying to really push myself to learn more about the craft, and definitely with the driving line, it's something that it's not there in real life, so it's something that I chose to turn, and it's something that I chose to turn off. But by no means does that mean that you should have it off. If it's something that makes you feel comfortable and it's something that makes your entire experience a lot more enjoyable, for sure, leave it on. It's also really important that once you start understanding the driving line, that once you're on track or whether you're in a race or whatever the situation may be, that you maintain your line. Always keep in mind that if there's other cars around you, keep your line until you can clearly see in your mirrors that it's safe to make a move. Veering off into different lines could just be a recipe for an accident, and you definitely don't want that. So just keep that in mind. If you're doing something, maintain your line, and if it's safe, then get out there and explore the different lines, and don't be afraid to set up a private test session just to go in there and explore different lines. If that's what you really want to do, you know, there's definitely the chance that you can go in there and do something right on your own and test out different racing lines, and that's always amazing because you never know, and you can find so much time just by exploring the different lines. Getting into braking, what I really just want to touch on is finding references for your braking points, and it's just important to find a point on the track, whether it's measuring a distance or a sign or whatever it may be. I mean, that's something I love about this, is that it could be the most random thing that you can think of, and that could be your reference point for braking. It's just something that when your brain sees it, you can immediately make a reaction instead of having it to be something that you're constantly looking for, or trying to remember if this is where I need to brake. No, it's just something automatic that just happens in your brain, and you really don't even have to look. It's just second nature. Your brain sees it, and your brake pedal or your braking foot is going to react immediately. And that's just important to build a consistency when you're getting around the track, doing laps and laps and laps. It's just really important to build that consistency, and finding those reference points has been huge in helping me, has been great in helping me, has been one of the best tools in helping me get around the track more consistent. Throttle input's another one of those that's another kind of an art form. You have to be very patient with it. Some cars are different. If you're running different levels of traction control, you want to make sure that you understand how much power is under your right foot, and you want to modulate the pedal accordingly, and you want to press the pedal accordingly so that you avoid any kind of wheel spin or spinning the car around, or creating any kind of an accident. But it's also, like I said earlier, but it's also hugely important to know, but it's also incredibly important to know just to be very patient. You're going to want to come out of the corner and want to smash the pedal into the ground just to get out of the corner, or build as much speed as possible, but be patient both in braking and be patient in getting out of the corner. You'll eventually start to feel the levels of grip and know where you can push and know how much you can push, and it'll just become second nature. So just be patient, be patient, be patient, and you'll get there. Something that I've noticed that has become a slight issue is the pit lane, both the entry and exit. It happens anywhere, and it just happens to be that some drivers are a little bit impatient, and it's going to happen. Specifically at the pit exit, you may have times where you are side by side with somebody and you're both in the pit lane trying to get out, and there's only space for one car. So just be aware of that. If you see that it's clear or it's safe for you to get in front of that person within the speed limit of the pit lane, go for it. Get out of that situation as safely as you can and as quickly as you can. If you can't, do your best to. I know it's difficult to try to let somebody go just because you want to get ahead, but try to avoid a dumb situation. And if you see that they're clearly in front of you, just let them by. And also, when you're coming out of the pits, look in your mirrors or use your relative black box to see if there's anybody coming up behind you, so that when you get to turn one, you don't get caught by any surprise of a car coming up behind you and you catch them out, and then you end up causing an accident for the two of you, which of course is just going to end up in it's just going to end in a bad way. This next topic is something that we do, and this next topic is something that it's what racing is really all about, and it's passing other drivers and gaining position. And when it comes to passing, there's definitely a lot of etiquette that you should follow. There's a lot of times where people want to dive bomb every single corner, and sometimes it works out for them. Sometimes they usually run wide, and it's just more embarrassing for them than anything. So don't be that person. Be aware of what you're doing. Be aware that there's another driver there, and be aware that they're probably going to try and defend. So leave space. Go for the pass, but just be aware of the space that's around you and give space to another driver. You don't want to be that person that is going in for a great pass. It's going to be a cool pass. It's going to look great and you're going to gain position. But because you weren't aware, you hit them, they hit you, you went offline, whatever it was, and you end up losing everything you just worked for. Some of these passes take laps and laps and laps to try and achieve. And when you're able to get it, it's a huge success, and it's a pretty big amount of euphoria that you feel, in the race. And it's just adding a whole different dimension of what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. So it's definitely good to be aware of it's good to be aware of everything else that's around you so that you don't cause a dumb accident and you can continue to enjoy yourself. And talking about flags, I really just want to touch on the blue flag really quick. And a lot of times you're going to be on track with drivers that are of all different license levels. And sometimes they're going to be 5, 6, up to 10 seconds faster than you. And obviously, that could vary, plus or minus. But what I really want to touch on is when if you are getting a blue flag, which more than likely as a beginner, as a beginner myself, it still happens. Um, Unfortunately, it comes with the territory that you make a mistake or somebody hits you or you hit somebody and you end up getting lapped. That's another thing. Do not, under any circumstance, if you can, try to finish every possible race. It's what's going to really help your iRating. So even if you get passed and lapped and you are getting blue flags, my point is that let them by. They're not you're not racing anybody else for position at that point. And by you moving out of the way, it's a matter of respect. It's a matter of those guys are in a it's a matter of those drivers are in a completely different mindset that you are at that moment. So you really have to adhere to that and let them get on with their race. If you're in a race situation, you definitely don't want anybody messing with your race. So don't do it to them. If you see a blue flag and that car is clearly right behind you trying to get by, let them by. If they're still, pretty far away, I've seen that iRacing tends to give the blue flag a little early. I'm assuming that's so that you become aware. Um, just be aware of that and keep an eye on your mirrors and see and just notice the gap and just notice the gap of the car behind you so that you become aware of how close they're getting and how close they are. And if they do end up catching up, you can let them by safely. This just kind of gets you prepared so that you have in mind that if they are going to pass you, you can already start thinking in your mind of where you're going to let them do it so that it's safe for both of you. And by all means, and by all means, if you're catching cars that have already lapped you, go for the pass 100%. Just be safe about it. And that leads me to my last point. And that leads me to my last point, safety. I just recently saw an interview from one of the iRacing directors, and they really do just care more about safety than you going fast. And I think that's great just because it sets the platform up for other drivers that want to take it more seriously. And you become very much aware that even though it's a virtual game and even though it's just a virtual platform, you still want to be safe because you don't want to ruin anybody else's experience. The emotion, the stress, it's all pretty much the same as it's been in real racing. There's obviously lots of variables that change, mainly the cost and all that stuff, but people still run very high emotions, and you don't want to mess with that. I said it a few seconds ago. I said it earlier. You don't want anybody messing with your race, and it's super important that you don't do that to anybody else. It's such a, I think to me at least, it's such a passionate thing that a human being can do. It's, being in control of a race car and, being in control of something that's at that speed and doing it over and over and over. Your mind gets into this ASMR state and it's just on autopilot, and you ruin that flow. It becomes very difficult to get back in it, and it's also extremely frustrating. So just keep that in mind. I try to make a huge deal about being safe on track. It makes my experience better. I try to make everybody else's experience around me better, and I just don't want to be that person that caused an accident. So, you know, on the road, in real life or in the sim, just remember to be safe. So that's going to be it for this section. I will see you tomorrow in the next one. I will see you later. Take care. I will see you in the next one. And I will see you tomorrow in the next one. See you later.